Okay, so for my JavaScript, before I get into explaining how I did my code, I just wanted to show my process of how I thought out on how I was going to create the game and make it interactive. So I basically did pseudocode. So I've written the steps, I've commented this all out so it won't actually affect my code, but I've always had this here so I kind of have an idea of how I want everything to work. So I've just written, first I want to do a randomized color for my cards at the start of the game, so that whenever the user or the player resets the game, the colors aren't in the same position so it'll be easy the next time they play it. Next, I've said allow only 2 cards to be selected, so I'll have to do something for that with my JavaScript. And then I said flip the cards around, reveal color, flip cards around, reveal color, so the 2 cards that are flipped and it reveals the color. And then it says asks, is the 2 cards the same? So that's what the computer needs to ask or figure out. And then it says if yes, it keeps, if no, it flips it back around. And then next I said when all cards are matched, the game is done. The one thing I did leave out is the timer, but this is basically how I started off with thinking how I was going to do this game. I had to just write down the steps and just make it understandable for myself. And at the end I said toggle means based on the attribute assigned. In this case, class either added this class to it. So this is just a note I wrote for myself to remind myself as I was making this game. But these are basically the steps that I did to start off making this game. This is not the actual steps that I actually did, because I did actually more than this, but this was just a starting point to start me off. So going into the code now. Okay, so now starting off with how I did my JavaScript for this memory game. So I started off by using a query selector. So I declared a variable which cannot be reassigned. That's why I used the const variable. I gave it the name all cards, and I did a query selector. And within my HTML, I wanted to select the section element, so everything that was in a section. And if you remember, within the section element was all the div tags of all the different cards. So I selected that first. So as you can see, I've selected where the cards are located in the HTML document. And the next section I did was randomize the order of the cards, and I used the for loop to do this. So for loops, you declare the variable I, and then you use a for actual loop. And as you can see, I said whatever I would be equal it to the length of cards. So I think the length of cards I had was 16. Yeah, I think it was 16. So I said the length, so there will be 16 of I said children. So basically all the children of the all cards, which is the section tag, will be all the divs inside. And then I said if I is bigger than or equal to 0 minus 1. And then within that loop, I basically selected that all the children of inside of the all cards, which was the section, which is all the divs, so all the cards, and I randomized the number. So that's how I just randomized the order using the for loop. Next, it says declared click card to be used for whether the card color, the card colors are matching or not. So basically, I just declared clicked card, gave it a null. So null is just empty, it's non-existent, it doesn't have a value. But I had to give it something to start off with, so it just means nothing. But I just wanted to just declare it here. And then I declared next. Basically, I used the let, but I declared a prevent click. So basically, this will just stop the user from clicking. So this will be used basically when the user has found a match. This will come into active, so this will change to true when there's a match. So it will stop the user from clicking on that particular card or stop anything happening to that card. It will just stay how it is. And the next I said user turns flip. So this is just basically, this would link to, if you remember in the HTML there was a flip section, so this would just be this would just go up in number as the user flips a set of cards. So this is just to declare the number of flips. Likewise with the matches found, this is to declare the number of matches. So if there's a set of cards found, this will go up by 1. So I just had to declare the flips and the matches so that I can use it later on. Next, I went onto the refresh button. So basically that's the reset button after the timer is done. I had to first of all create the button, because in my HTML I didn't initially create it, even though I did start it in my CSS. I created the button and then I gave it the text, of reset, and then I gave it an ID of reset as well, so that the styling of could be added to it, to the reset button that had the ID reset. So that's for the reset button. So I did that all in my JavaScript. I could have did it in my HTML, but I decided not to do it because as I was doing the game, I was coming up with different ideas of what to do. So that's why I kind of just started doing it in my JavaScript. So I did it as I went along. Next, I declared the timer. So if you remember, there was a timer for the game. So the player would have a limited amount of time to try and find all the matches, try and make the game more interesting. So I declared basically my time. So as you remember, I said in my HTML that the user or the player has 75 seconds. So I've started off by just assigning the time left to 75, and then I've basically created a download timer variable, and then I've given it a function which basically would count down the time. So I've started off by giving a function, then within that function I've done an if statement. So basically if the time left is less than or equal to 0, it will clear the timer, so it will stop the timer, and then the text that will be displayed would be finish. So that basically just helps that when the timer gets to 0, the timer will no longer show and finish text will pop up. Next, I've done time runs out and not all matches are found. So this is basically what I've got. So I've got an IDs of the paragraph tag that had the ID winner. So it's basically saying if the time left is equal to or less than 0, I would then get the p tag that had the ID winner, and I will change the visibility, the styling of the visibility to visible. As you remember, when we went to the CSS, the visibility was set automatically to hidden. So now I'm changing it to visible, so it shows up. But this is for a winner. And it says also I've changed the text content to you lose, try again. Right? So this is when the timer reaches 0, the actual p tag will show and the text will say you lose, try again. So it would change from I think it said winner, it said something about you won basically, but this time it would change it automatically to you lose, try again, because the timer has reached 0. Yeah. So moving on, I've put the reset button. So basically I want to now take this reset button that I've created up here and I've appended it. When the timer runs out, I want it to show up so that they can restart the game. So I've just appended a child so it can show. And then I've also added a listen event for when they click the button of this reset button, I want it to actually reset the page. So I've put some code here of getting the element by ID, which is now reset, which you can see here. And I've run the function of reset page, which is here, which basically, gets the section and it resets the page. And then also I've run a function here, which is reset page, and then for the reset page function, I've gotten the section tag or element, I've got the text content, and I said this is the alternative to use to allow the colors not to be displayed when refreshing. So this just basically stops the colors from showing up like briefly. It shows up for I think when I was doing it, it was showing up for maybe 2 milliseconds. It was showing up really quickly, but to avoid it showing up and giving the player sort of a hint of where all the randomized colors will show, I just gave it a text of nothing dot 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 so that nothing will show. Include of the cards, it will just show this text. So it looks like it was loading as well. And then I've just put window dot location reload, and that just reset the page or reloaded the page. So then that was the first part of that if statement, and then when I finished that object, I went else. I want to keep the timer just basically go in and add the text to the time left. So it was starting off with 75, so it's counting down. I wanted to add, so I concatenated the text seconds remaining. So it would have said 75 downwards, seconds remaining. Okay, and then after that, I wanted to just basically do the timer of it, basically minusing 1 for every second that went past. So this is how I kind of did the timer of it subtracting 1 second, or 1 every second I should say. And the way I done it is I knew that 1 second equals 100 milliseconds, and by subtracting the 1 every 100, because JavaScript does it by milliseconds not seconds, so I had to write 1000, sorry, that minus the 1 for the time left for every second that went past. Okay, and I said after the clock finishes value of time left will go to -1, so it would actually go to -1. That's why previously I said if the time left is, I think I said less than or equal to 0. That's the reason why I said equal to 0, because it actually does go to -1. As I was doing the test, it doesn't stop at 0, it goes to -1, and that's it, 0. That's a stop point. So next I said when card is clicked, run this function, displays colors and removes number. Okay, so this is for my flip card. So if you remember on my HTML, I gave each div of the card, so the card element, I gave it a flip card once clicked function. So within that function, I wanna basically target the card that was clicked, and then it says I used E, so E is the object handler. Object is made accessible, must be called on clicked event in HTML. E can be whatever you name, so it didn't have to be E, but I've used E. And I've basically just written comments. As you've seen, I've written comments to help remind myself why I've done certain things, and you know, as you go along, you just do certain things, so you just need to write comments to remind yourself why. I've commented out a lot of stuff because I've tried, as you can see, I've tried these stuff here, but it didn't really work, so I've commented them out, but I didn't want to exactly delete them just in case I went back to it. So just ignore these comments for now. And then after that, I've just basically declared my targeted card, so my click card. I've used the const because I don't want to reassign it. I want this to be fixed. I've done an if statement to do nothing if any of these conditions are met. So basically I've did an if statement to basically not do nothing if the conditions that I've written down are true, basically. So it says if prevent click or target card is equal to click card, or the target card class name includes done, or the time left is equal to -1, then I want it to return nothing. So I don't want it to do anything. That's why I've just put return and it's just empty. So that just stops anything happening if any of these are true. Well, yeah, any of these are true because I've used or. Next, I've declared some stuff. I said on each target, replace the class card back with empty and add done class. Also, and empty the inner HTML, which are currently numbers. So basically, I've on the target card that I've selected here. So it could be that any of the cards that I've clicked, I've given it the class name, and I've just replaced the class names so that it says the card back class name now says nothing, and I've used the trim method or property. And here on the target card, so the card that I've clicked, I've added the class name of done, and then the inner HTML I've just emptied. So this takes away the 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. because before it had the numbers, but this was taken away. The reason why I did do this is because when I flipped the card, it showed it like mirrored, so it was backwards. So it didn't look right, so I just emptied it so that there was no text in there once it was flipped back. And that just avoided any issues with that. Okay, moving on to the next part. I said if the click card is not the click card, so this will have an effect on all the other cards that are not clicked. So it says if we haven't clicked on a card, it just keeps track of the card and displays its color. Okay, so I've just assigned click card to target card, the card I've targeted, and then I've said if else, if it is the click card now, so if it's true, it will check if the new card does not match the old card via the data color attribute. So as you remember before, going back to my HTML, each div had a data color attribute, and it had the color either red, green, blue, orange, yellow, etc. And using this helps me to match up my cards and target my cards instead of using the classes of whatever the class was, because it wasn't working. But this worked much better. So I'm going to scroll down. So now the if statement here, I've said if the click card dot get attribute data color, so the card that I've clicked, if its attribute of data color is not equal to the targeted card attributes data colored, then I want that prevent click variable that I declared above to be true, so it stops it from being clicked. And then I want to set the timeout function, right? So this basically adds class names. So it will take away the done class name, it will take it off, and then it will add the card back class name to the click card and then for the trim card, it then adds the target card class name, and it replaces it from done to nothing and adds the card back. So I've just had to basically change these in a function, and then I've also had to change the reset for click card to null, prevent card to false, and these all had to be done so that there wasn't any errors. And then also I've added 1 to flip cards because it's been flipped. I've flipped a set, so I just used the flips plus. So for the flips, when it was equal to 0, it will now be 1, 2, 3, so forth every time I flip it. And then I've got the document by ID of flips. So in the HTML, it had the ID of flips, and I've changed the inner HTML to what the actual flip said. So right now it says 0, it will change it to 1 now. Okay, and then I've done a timer for that. So 1 second. So that's what I've done for that part. And then I said if we click the card and match is found. So this is the next part. So if the match is found. So I said else if the click card attribute, so the data color, so that attribute is now equal to the other attribute of the targeted card, then I'm changing or reassign, I should say, the click card to null. So it does not use the previous card selected that was found as a match. And then also added 1 to match, which was 0 previously. So it will add 1 to it. So if it was 1, it will add 1 to it to make it 2. If it was 3 matches, it will add 1 to it to make it 4. You know, so that's what we'll do. And then I've got the document by ID of match, and then I've just basically assigned whatever the matches is now. So I've just reassigned it. So previously of what I've done with the flips, I've done it with the matches. Okay, and then next it says if the matches is equal to 8. So this next part here is basically when I found all my matches. So there was about 16 cards, so there's basically 8 sets that could possibly be found. So I've done if matches is equal to 8. So that's the condition. So if this is true, then I've then changed that p tag, which had the ID of winner. I made it visible. So by default, it automatically said winner. So that will now be visible. The time left would be finished. So that will automatically say finish. So the timer would just go away. It will stop counting down. And the ID of time left, which I'm going to select here, I want it to display none. So it just stops displaying the time left, the text of time left. So it gets rid of the timer and removes the space it takes up. So by using display none, it removes the space. Whereas if I use visibility hidden, it would have still took up the space. So that's why I use display none. And then for the reset button, I've gotten it and I've appended it in a child of the body. So it will append at the bottom of the body. And then I've added a event listener of the click to the button. And I've run the refresh page. So that's what I've done here. I've just added the onClick function for it to reset the page. So that's what it's all done here. And then here I've said I've selected the quick selector of the section, so where all the cards are. And for the text content, I've just put these dots, and it says this is an alternative to use to allow the colors not to be displayed when refreshing. So I've done that thing again to stop when it's refreshing. For the colors to be displayed. So this is basically what was done previously. So I've just done it here again. And then finally, I have an else condition. So basically, if the matches are not equal to 8, it just continues click card to null. So it lets you continue making matches if the time hasn't run out yet. So this just allows you to continue. But that's basically it for the description or explanation of my JavaScript to make this memory game. It was pretty in detail. I think this took me probably a couple of days to make, and I had to keep going and coming back to it because it was a lot to kind of get my head around. But once you kind of do a lot of testing, trial and error, you actually understand it, and it makes sense. So this was the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for this memory game that I've created. I hope you guys enjoyed the explanation. If any questions, just ask in the comments below.